Okay, so this is a video for specifically the pressure of parents, how to deal with it, because I know it can get really intense sometimes. And um, parents, if you're listening to this, I say this with a lot of love. The more you pressure your daughter or son, the less likely it is for them to end up in a healthy marriage. Because when you are pressuring them, it just feels like they need to get rid of this pressure. So I need to marry the next person that comes in so I can stop feeling like I'm a bad daughter for not for causing my mom so much stress. And I have seen it over and over again where let's say the daughter, I'm going to focus on the daughter for a minute. The daughter gets married because of the pressure, and not much later, she gets divorced. Multiple times I've seen this occasion. And if you're sent this video, right, I just want to let you know I'm a relationship coach and this is what I deal with. I help people who want to get married become the person they need to be to create a healthy, beautiful marriage in the long run. And when you're coming from pressure and stress and fear and it's not going to work and all of that, all you end up with is the same exact thing that you kind of started off with if you don't take a look at why you feel a lot of pressure. And sometimes that pressure really blinds people's perception of who they want to be with because they're just focused on how do I get love from another person instead of what qualities actually matter in marriage. And hear me out when I say this. When you're so stressed out and you're afraid and all of that, and you find someone and they say one word of affirmation, and you start getting attached to someone that is really not an ideal person, but they just happen to say something good in the moment. And then people just end up in really bad situations from there just because their 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 perception is not clear on what actually matters in the long term when it comes to marriage, what actually contributes to the health of a successful marriage. Okay, so first off, I find it really fascinating that sometimes parents are all about tawakkul and all of that, but when it comes to marriage, that goes out the window because they start blaming the person, the child for, I don't want to say child, but the daughter for not being married on time the way they should be. And it's not necessarily the parent's fault. Okay, so let me explain this for a minute. What's happening in the parent's brain is they have a timeline of when they think it's appropriate for the person to be married. And when they see that it's not happening, they're obviously going to freak out because culturally speaking, it's dangerous to not be married at this time, at the certain time that they think it's appropriate. So because they think it's so bad and so dangerous to not be married, they won't know how to handle the pressure of what do I do if my kid's not married? Like this is really, really bad. What are people going to think? Like this is it's more of a survival thing at this point. And what happens is all of the tawakkul and all of the rationality of Allah's timing goes out the window. In order to cope with this stress of the fear of their daughter not being married, the only thing they know what to do is to blame and to pressure them into getting married so they themselves can stop feeling that feeling of like this is really bad. This is a really bad situation that my daughter isn't married. So to the person listening to this, if you are the person not married and you're being pressured by being married, the best thing you can do is understand why your parents are pressuring you so that you can separate your guilt from their stress. Because otherwise it becomes this really codependent relationship where the only way you can feel okay is if she's feeling okay, which means that in order for her to feel okay, you have to be married. And then you blame yourself for not being married. And then it's just this back and forth of pressure and stress, and it doesn't serve either of you. But the first step is to allow your, I'm going to stick to mom for a minute. If it's the mom that's really stressed, if the mom is really stressed, you have to allow her to be stressed because this is her test between her and God. It has nothing to do with you. She is seeing that, oh my God, my daughter is not married. this is a really big problem. Okay. She wishes that her daughter is married. And because Allah hasn't granted that, she is sad. And the ways that she's coping with it is whatever, however she deals with it, right? Either blaming you, blaming something else. But your job is to not take it personally, because as soon as you take it personally, you are going to feel so much pressure to fix it, to fix her sadness. But her sadness actually has nothing to do with you. That's between her and what God has decreed, which is it's not your time to get married. So just like any other test, your parent is supposed to feel sad every now and then, and it's not your job to fix it. Now, what I see typically, what happens by default is like the daughter feels really so much pressure to fix her mom's sadness and stress by getting married to the next person she sees, so she can feel like she's a good daughter so she can stop feeling like a bad daughter for causing the stress to her mom. But the distinction here is the daughter is not causing the stress to her mom. The mom is believing these thoughts that so this is a terrible thing that my daughter's not married, and she's mad, but she's not going to blame God. She's not going to blame herself. She's going to blame her daughter. So that's the only way she knows how to cope with it. Okay. So my point here is you have to separate. Like your mom is stressed and she's allowed to be stressed. She's allowed to be sad for as long as it takes. You cannot take responsibility for that because that's not yours to take responsibility for. She's allowed to be sad. Just like if she were to be tested with a disease or something in her life, some loss in her life or something like that, she's going to be sad. And there's nothing you can do about it. Her daughter not being married is her test between her and God. It has nothing to do with you. Now, that's step one, right? You have to separate. You have to stop taking it personally. Because every time you take it personally, you're going to think, oh my God, I'm such a bad daughter for not being married at this point. What's wrong with me? And then you kind of spiral into that. And then you and your parents just have a really tense relationship that the topic of marriage is just so sensitive to talk about because people just end up crying and you just can't, right? So the way I used to deal with it, right, when there was pressure in any way, I remember my grandma used to ask me all the time. She'd be like, okay, are you married yet? I'd be like, nope, Nana, Allah has not written it for me yet. She's like, and then she would get stressed. And I'd be like, nope, it's just not time for me. And I would keep I would stay focused on how to feel stable and knowing and like knowing that there's nothing wrong and it's all just Allah's timing. And even though I know my grandma might be feeling a lot of pressure and like, why is she not married yet? Like, this is a big problem, but I'm not going to take on her fears. Like, her fears are her fears and my fears are my own. I don't need to take on her stuff. Okay. So how it shows up practically, next time your parents ask you, I'm going to stick to the mom for a minute. If your mom asks like, hey, why aren't you married yet? Like, we gotta get this going. You could be like, yes, mom, I love you. I know you really want me to get married and I'm doing the best that I can to figure it out. And it's hard, but I'm making dua and I'm open to all opportunities and to the opportunities that I think are good for me. And I understand that you're sad that I'm not there yet. And I'm feeling sad about it too, but you know, it just doesn't make sense for me to stress about it. And what's going to happen is she's going to continue to stress about it. And you're going to give her the space to allow her to stress about it if she needs to. What happens with time is she realizes that it's not that, like, when you allow her to stress about it and you don't give her the reaction that she's looking for, she'll stop blaming you with time. But we shouldn't depend on that. Now, it's a very a deep topic, so I'll leave that for a more intimate conversation. But the main point I want to make here is you have to stop taking it personally when your parents are stressing out. They can pressure you all day and night. Your job is to stay grounded and like, nope, actually, it's not my time yet. I'm doing the best that I can. It's not like I'm doing anything wrong. I'm open to opportunities. I'm trying my best. I'm working on myself, and I'm leaving the rest to Allah. to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if my parents don't have the tawakkul that they need for this process as well, because they need that as well. It's not just you. Everyone needs the tawakkul. If they don't have it, that's not necessarily my problem. That's their test, that's their problem. Why? Because Allah created us to be tested. And this is their test as well. And if they're failing the test, doesn't mean you have to fail it with them. What you can do is say, I love you, mama. I know you're stressed. This is hard, and I'm figuring it out. Because in their mind, you have to really understand it from their perspective. They think you're a failure for not being married. They think like this is a total disaster for being single at this age. And this is like, this is very bad, right? They think it's the most disastrous thing ever. And if you agree with them, and if you believe their thoughts, you are also going to feel that much pressure, and you're going to drown with them in the stress of the pressure in the marriage, right? So if this is the first video you're watching of me, I would recommend you watch all the previous videos about how I talk about the timeline and when Allah has written it for you, and the very first videos that I created just to help you see how to think of marriage, to help you feel a lot more grounded, a lot more calm, a lot more logical about it. And I promise you, when you come from a very calm place and you lead the way every time this topic comes up, people will start following your lead. We can't depend on them, right? We're not trying to fix your parents into feeling less pressure so they can stop pressuring you. They're allowed to pressure you all they want, but you're not going to give into it because you don't believe what they're believing. You don't believe that it's a disaster that you're single. You don't believe that you're a failure for being single. And you don't believe that you're not good enough for being single. None of that. Because as soon as you do believe that, you're going to give into the pressure. You're going to agree with the pressure. And your brain's going to think the only way to get rid of this pressure is if I just give them what they're looking for, so I can stop feeling it. So I can finally feel like I'm enough. So because if I get married, then they'll see me as enough. That's what creates pressure. Okay? The way to overcome it is you to solidly believe you have a solid self-concept that I am enough even if I'm single. It doesn't matter. Me being single doesn't mean anything about me as a human being. It's just a status. It's just like, okay, I'm wearing a blue hijab, I'm wearing a green hijab. Doesn't mean anything. It's just a status. It's just a circumstance, is what I mean. It doesn't increase or decrease your worth. And so in order to not give into the pressure, you have to believe that. Okay. So to the parents, I urge you, if you are a parent watching this, the best thing you can do for your daughter or son is to like support them and acknowledge like this is hard and that they are doing the best that they can. Because as soon as you pressure them, it's adding to the fire. But for the people listening to this who are not being pressured, and your parents aren't going to listen to this. It's okay if your parents aren't going to listen to this. You don't need them to listen. What you need is for you to solidify your ideas of what it means to be single so that you have your back no matter what happens, no matter who pressures you to do something. Okay? I'll give like a slight example so that you understand what I mean by pressure. But if someone pressures you into saying something like, or if someone pressures you like, hey, you have to take this job. Like you have to. If you don't take this job, it's really bad. If it's really bad, you have to take this job. And the job they're referring to is just a haram job, and it's not something you agree with. You're not going to feel pressure. You're going to be like, absolutely not. Like this goes against my values, and it's okay that they're stressed that I'm not taking it. I'm not going to take it no matter what happens. I am not going to say yes to someone just so that they can stop stressing about it. They're choosing to be stressed about me not having the haram job. That's on them. That's not on me. So we have to learn how to separate our emotions from what people are feeling. And it's really hard, especially in the Islamic culture. It's, by the way, it's a culture that we're taught to take responsibility for our parents' feelings like all the time, and that creates codependency. And if you want to learn more about codependency, I encourage you to look it up. But it's this feeling of constantly needing to take responsibility for the other person's feelings. And that's not what Islam teaches us. So to 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 be in a more healthy dynamic with your parents, you have to allow them to feel what they need to feel and hold the space for them if they need to, but you also have to hold the space for yourself so that you have the capacity to even show up for them in that way. And yeah, so I hope that helps. Yeah, I think alhamdulillah. And I appreciate every one of you for commenting all the positive, nice comments. It's good to see that it's helping and it's encouraging you. And please do continue to do so. It helps me to see the feedback so I know where everyone is at. And if you want to dig deeper into understanding the self-concept and the identity stuff that I always talk about, please do join my Inner Shift. The main course is just $200. It's a simple course that can help you really understand your identity and where you feel stuck at. And also, you can always book a one session with me, and all that information is on my website, inshallah. All right, I will see you on the next video. Assalamu alaikum.